Z100 has got a big, huge 4K emblazoned on the side of it. It's proud to be a 4K camcorder. But it's also a really good HD camcorder. This is a 10-bit 422 recorder, okay, using the F5 and F55's codec, and it's got HD SDI out, it's got timecode in and out. This is a serious piece of kit. The Z100 is a camera that's appealing directly to the jobbing videographers, the people out there who need to get a lot of coverage in a short space of time, but are still wanting a view to the future, a lot of flexibility, and are really trying to get a good quality codec, good quality footage. So rather than going down the large sensor route, they understand that what they want is a codec that's strong enough for good editing, and it'll have a view to the future use. 5, 10, 15 years ahead, those 4K rushes are still going to be usable. So unlike the Z1, the Z100 is really approaching professionals with features such as HD SDI output. And that means that suddenly the whole world of professional video now interfaces with the camera. The lovely thing about the Z100 is that, in fact, when you look at it, it's just the same sort of unit design that we've seen before. It's a very comforting design. All the buttons are placed in all the same places, so it's immediately very comfortable to pick up. You take this unit full of the most amazing exotic imaging technology, and you can play with it like a Z1, like a PXW 100, and I was able to sit down with it and within 15 minutes, 30 minutes, be comfortable to go out and shoot with it, knowing I can get the right results, with the right picture profile, with the right sort of exposure settings and that sort of thing. That's great. Way back there was a camera called the Z1. It was a very interesting new design of camera with this funky new thing called HDV, high definition video, very highly compressed. And it wasn't really the camera designed to shoot major feature films or even broadcast television. It was the videographer's best friend. And we would buy a Z1 thinking, gosh, HDV, but actually we knew most of the time we were working at standard definition. So why do we want HDV? We could play around with it, get used to the workflow. Then what happened is we found out how to use HDV in interesting new ways. For example, if you scrunch it down, you made very good quality standard definition, better than DV, because all those big 420 color pixels got scrunched down in size to become almost 422. So for the first time we could do chroma key. The Z1 gave us a new technology slightly ahead of time, which gave us time to adopt to it and get used to it and develop our own workflows for it. Now, that is, I think, what the Z100 is doing, is bringing us 4K before we're actually sure how we're going to use it.
4K for me is about reframing, better color, better latitude, and interesting aspect ratios, the right aspect ratio for the right story.
Right now, 4K does have its uses in interesting areas. I mean, I'm a corporate video shooter, but my part of the corporate video is in the corporate events market. And quite often these are the best places to experiment with the new technologies, because we have all the best toys. We have a very exotic sort of display systems. We can link several screens together in frame accuracy. So basically we can make things play across screens.
Somebody says, well, it's going to be 4 or 5 HD screens wide by 1 HD screen high. So my aspect ratio on a recent job earlier this year was, I think it was 48:9. You can do that with 4K. You've just got that much more space to play in order to be able to do strange aspect ratios and T-shaped video.
Well, yeah, it's true. We're very much at the beginning stages of 4K, and it's just like HDV when it first came out. Nobody had a screen to show it on, until we suddenly realized, hey, we can show this in PowerPoint by converting these big HDs down to 720p and popping them in PowerPoint. And that was quite possibly our first taste of high definition that we ourselves had shot, rather than technical demonstrations.
As soon as HD came along, it was fantastic. With that extra resolution, I had the advantage of I had something to cut away to, but instead of having cutaways of hands or other objects in the room, I could cut away to the same person. Now, the way that would work is I would frame it very loose, knowing that's going to be my wide shot that I can cut to, and then knowing that I could cut in to a much closer, a big close-up, or even if I'm being ridiculous, a big close-up.
4K is, of course, something we've been encouraged to join up on, and there are people saying the number of pixels, you know, it's too much, we can't even do HD properly yet. But don't forget that we do need to move on. We're currently working to this thing called Rec. 709, which is 20 years old. In fact, 4K brings with us much more. We have better color renditioning. TV sets can do a lot more in terms of brightness range. And also we're moving from 8-bit acquisition to 10-bit acquisition, and the amount of colors we can reduce in the greens and the reds is, we got more with the 4K. So don't just think about 4K as being resolution, think of it as color resolution. Think of it as the ability to push and pull the brightness further to get a much more pleasing, natural spread of tones. The Z100 introduces 4 key technologies new to the videography market. So on top of the 4K-ness of it all, we've also got to store it somewhere. So that brings the XQD card. Now the XQD card is something which is almost the same size and shape as our standard SD-HC card, a little bit thicker, and really it's a relative of the compact flash card. It's kind of compact flash and then some.
Biggest advantage of a camera I like is footage that I can take from the camera and put straight in the edit. Knowing I can get a file that will go straight on the timeline and I can use it, that's what really counts.
So what we're looking at now is the XAVC format, which is a new umbrella of different codecs working at different resolutions at different data rates, but they all belong to the same family. Now the XAVC format is actually the format being used by the F5 and the F55 cameras. I mean, this is a really good, strong codec. It's going to be one of those standards, a bit like DV was. It just works. Even at launch, it just works. I popped the card into Final Cut Pro 10. The camera said, oh, I'm attached to a USB device. Shall I be a deck? Yes, the camera was a deck. Final Cut Pro 10 saw the card. I saw my clips. Select them, import them, there they are. And these are not clips that need to be transcoded. These are edit-ready clips. In the future, we'll have a more compressed version for when you're wanting to do longer records. This is 4K. It's eating data at a huge rate. And sometimes you need the resolution, but you don't need all the quality. So for the longer records, the presentation records and that sort of thing, we're talking about a slightly more compressed version. Still 422, but there'll be a long GOP 10-bit 422, then there'll be a long GOP 420, and then there'll be an 8-bit 420 for the very long records. There'll be an update to this camera that'll allow you to record AVC HD to go along with your HD or 4K recordings. So if the producer or director wants their own copy of the rushes to work with, they haven't quite got up to 4K yet, off we go. There's your AVC HD card, sir. Another strange feature, which is the first I've seen, a Wi-Fi controller for the camera. So it's a Wi-Fi device. You can log onto a Wi-Fi and you can control it with an iPhone, Slate device, Android or whatever. It's just a browser's interface. But that can control not just the start-stop of the camera, it also brings you the paint controls, the balance of red to blue, that sort of thing. It'll bring you the focus and zoom. And somewhere interesting here, you think, hold on, this is a great multi-camera setup camera, a little base unit where when you're not doing a full TV studio, but what you're trying to do is perhaps a webcast, a multicam webcast, and you've got the HD signal going to a HD vision mixer through HD SDI. You're internally recording 4K, so you can do the cropping later, just to perhaps take the crowd shots, the reverse angle of the crowd and zoom into people there. So who's going to buy the Z100? Well, I think really it's appealing to those people who would have gone for the PMW 100, 150, and in fact people like me who went for the Z1, who are basically looking to the future, wanting to have flexibility and the highest possible quality at a price point they can afford. They want to get going but can't really justify F5, F55. Also, those people who are shooting in circumstances where you don't want to be caught changing lenses, the videographers, those fast-changing, fast-moving situations where, you know, if you're having to swap lenses or worry about depth of field. I mean, just doing an interview with a f1.4 lens, people who've tried it say it's a risky thing, you're having to alter things. So we've gone back to finding actually this little all-in-one design being very useful for that sort of videography application. It's also got a lovely wide range of periphery uses in the scientific, education, publishing, all sorts of other uses for it. But things like the HD SDI output, the 422, 10-bit codec, all these things point towards a busy, jobbing videographer trying to get the best flexibility and as wide a coverage as possible in a simple, short amount of time.